Today, I want to talk about difficult people, people that just can trigger us by their words or their actions. It could be an overbearing boss. It could be a coworker that's really annoying and is passive aggressive. It could be a family member who wants to tell you how to live your life. And also, there's a special brand of difficult people that we call MAGA. So, today I want to do two things: shift your perspective on how to see them, and also how to discover what is the deeper reason that you're upset by their behavior. And then I want to give you a tool, and it's a communication tool, and it works beautifully. It's evidence-based. It's from a book called Crucial Conversations, and it's just this principle I adapted. And it's something I help my clients do because most of our lives, a lot of our difficulty comes from how to communicate with others and how to understand what others are trying to communicate to us. So, there was a time in my life when I was really triggered and would get very emotional by oppressive, what I consider oppressive comments that were religious in nature and also sexist. And I noticed that some other people were just like mildly annoyed, but I was really angry. Now, anger is not a bad emotion, actually. It's better than despair. Anger means that I want to do something about it. So there was a light and a dark side to this reaction that I would have to sexist and religiously oppressive language. And the light side was that I created. So, out of my anger about a class action lawsuit brought by women who worked in the financial services field, I decided to create an organization called Women's Political Voice. So I would go around and talk to college age women, and I would say, no matter what you want to do in your life, just consider at some point running for office because your perspective is needed. So that's an example of how being triggered and being angry can result in a kind of creative unleashing. But the dark side was that because I didn't really know the root of that anger, and that below it was really a kind of fear, it was exhausting to be angry. And eventually, I actually stopped doing activist work because I was just tired of feeling angry. So anger is good. So if you're feeling angry in response to belligerent people, that's actually a better place to start than feeling really weak and helpless about it. So the other part of my anger, and I really didn't figure this out until my midlife unraveling and exploring my mother wound, was that sometimes the emotional response that you have to somebody is rooted in a personal experience, but sometimes our personal experience is also part of an ancestral wound that just exaggerates the emotion. And also, you can be tapping into something collective. So, for example, many women are attuned to centuries of the suffering of women, women being actually murdered for being women or for, just thinking about life differently. So that is part of our psychic DNA. So sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. And you might say, why am I so upset? Like, objectively speaking, why am I so upset? It doesn't make sense. And so, number one, this is what I do with my clients is to explore the deeper root of the personal aspect. And then once that is sort of becomes disarmed and dissipates, so you're not so reactive, then you can tap into what is going on collectively and what is my role in the collective. So, depending on where you're at, the first thing I recommend is being curious. So even if you're upset that you become triggered because you're like, oh, that person has power over me, the first thing you want to do is just be a detective and just be curious and explore the reaction. And I'm going to give you a couple of ways to think about it. And so this is your takeaway number one is Carl Jung would say that between two people, there are four conversations happening. And one of them is between their conscious awareness. And we know, and science backs us up, that we only know 20% of really what's going on. And so right off the bat, when you're reacting to something, you can tell yourself, aha, I know there's something deeper going on. I don't have to judge myself about it. I don't even have to judge the other person, but maybe that makes you feel better. But there's more beneath the surface, and I'm not really seeing it. So there's this, we're having a conversation between our conscious awareness, and then there's a conversation happening between the unconscious of the other person absorbing what you're doing and saying, and vice versa. But where most of the communication is happening is really between the unconscious of the two people. And there's kind of a dance going on. And sometimes when there's the most emotional reaction both ways, it's because there is a wound. And either some people are already aware of the wound or some people are completely unconscious of the wound. And, the wounds want to play together and they're needy. And it's like a monster. It's like a 6-year-old child who you can tell is all revved up and they come in and they're running around and you can tell, uh-oh, something bad is going to happen because they don't know how to deal with their emotions. And so there's a pent up emotion that needs to be released. And it can either be something fun and joyful, or if it's a pent up frustration or, just feeling, I don't know, just something negative, they're looking for a fight because that negative energy has to be expressed. So when I talk about MAGA, for example, there is a lot of unconsciousness about the roots of the anger, about the grievance. And the more unconscious you are and unable to look inside, then you automatically make yourself a victim. You automatically project onto others. And often, you'll probably notice this by now, those who are most judgmental of others actually aren't even able to deal with their own harsh inner judgment. So their sense of judgment isn't coming from a place of strength, it's coming from a place of weakness. And so they use the outside world in order to build them up. That's never an answer long term, but that's really where it's coming from. And so you've probably heard the saying, wounded people wound people. That can kind of be on steroids sometimes. So that's one way you can shift your perspective is be curious because we don't know the deeper thing that's going on yet. And that there's 4 conversations going on between 2 people. Now, when you add 2 more people and then you add a collective, you can see how that can really gain some momentum in a very dark way. So, so the tool that I want to talk about is it's based on a principle in a book called Crucial Conversations called Start with Heart. So I just use this principle because it's so powerful. And the name Start with Heart kind of gives it away, how why it works. And it's evidence-based. And it's that, I don't like this person, maybe I don't even respect them, but I can at least care about them as a fellow human being. And if I can do that, then I'm going to be more effective in trying to communicate what I really want them to hear. So sometimes we can suck at communicating because our emotions are in the way. So, what I did with this principle is I added some things on top of it and I put it into a template. And I'm going to teach you the steps in the template. And you really need to stick to the template because that's why it shows that it works, the evidence of sticking to this template. So we start with some, and we write these down. So we actually do this in writing and put it in a document. And even when we're having the conversation, we have it with us because that shows that we're being very thoughtful in what we want to communicate. So it feels awkward and weird, but when you're having this kind of conversation, you can't really trust yourself not to react. So you let the person know. I put my thoughts down in writing because I want to be really thoughtful about this and I want to be heard. And so I've taken time to write this down. And so the conversation starts with I statements, which you might be familiar with. So I see, I think, I feel, I want. And then the principle from Start with Heart really focuses on the I want. I want for me, I want for you, I want for our relationship, our arrangement, however we have to work together. And so therefore, I want to do this, or I want to try this, or I want to get your input on what we should do going forward. So I see it means sticking to the data, it's observations. So this is the part that people don't do very well. They just get right to like, you make me feel this way. And number one, that's not true because people don't make you feel a certain way. Something happens, something said, there's an emotion that happens in the body, and then feelings are just your wanting to find meaning in the emotion. And sometimes what we think we're feeling isn't actually what we're feeling, or we're feeling a combination of things. So, a better way to start our conversation is to say, here's what I've seen, and here's what I've noticed, and here are my observations. A great way to start with that, even, is to say, here's what I've noticed about myself. In a certain situation, when you say this, or if it's a boss, when you just send an email that says, we need to talk, my body goes into fear mode because I start filling in the gap because you haven't even told me what you want to talk about. So I can't even prepare for it. And then I have an authority complex and blah, 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 blah. So a great way to start is here's what I've noticed. When you do this, I end up feeling this way. So you're not blaming them for the way that you feel, but you say, this is how I react to that. And then you can go on and say and then you're automatically saying what you're noticing about them. So I notice that you often seem to say things that don't really fill in the gaps for me or fill in the gaps for people. And then there's some fear because of the uncertainty. And you want to be really specific about examples. So you say, for example, in this email on August 8th, you said this, and I ended up reacting like this, and I tried to get myself out of it, and you know, I I responded this way, but email after email, I couldn't get enough information that would relieve my stress. And you may have wanted or not wanted to cause stress. So you are using data points. So there aren't any emotions here. You're just saying, this is what I've observed, and this is what I've observed about the effect on me or the effect on you. And then the second I statement is I think. So now let's say it's the boss, and the boss needs to have a conversation and help an employee understand, that they can't keep not doing their timesheets, for example, or they're always late getting a report back. And so the boss might say, I've observed that, you often are late doing this or getting this done. So the I think is what is the natural consequence of that behavior? So we don't want to denigrate somebody because that's not how to inspire somebody to improve. Really, we want to say, your role is really important. And I rely on you. And so when this is late, then I can't do this. And this is how that feeds in to the system. And this is our mission, right, as an organization. So you're helping people understand the cause and effect of continuing the behavior. I mean, it could be mom, mom, I've noticed that when I am joyfully telling you about what I did last weekend, you say this and it totally depletes me. And so, I've noticed this over time and I've noticed my reaction. And I think that, you may not mean to do that, but it's causing me to want to spend less time with you. So again, cause and effect. And we're not being emotional here. So we have I see, data points, I think, natural consequence. And then I feel. This is where you get to be emotional. So you can say, I feel depleted when that's the response to when I share something, or I feel worried, or I get frustrated. And so here is where you can explain the emotional impact without blaming the other person for your feelings, but that this is the emotion that you experience. And maybe you say, yeah, I know that's about me and I need to do that. However, I want to be successful here. And so I think it is, I think you would want to know, how can you be more effective with me? So then we go to the I want. So the I wants are, first of all, you have to wonder what you want. And sometimes people can't answer that question. They just want to be mad and they want to vent. Okay, but does that really get you what you want? In the end, you probably want to feel respected, or you want your time to be respected, or I want to feel joyful at work and I feel joyful when, and I don't feel joyful here. So here's where you get to be emotional about you. So this is only your perspective. Now, what do you want for the other person? So if it's your boss, you might want to say, "Oh, I want you to be able to trust me and I feel micromanaged." So that's what you want for them. I want to make you look good as a boss. Or the boss might say, "I want you to be successful." So, and if there is, and so maybe then training comes into play or something like that. So I want for me, but you also want for the other person. And then we get to the third want, which is I want for our relationship. I want our relationship to be, I want us to be in sync. I want us to be more comfortable working together. I want us to complement each other. And you could be very specific about that. I want us to have a stand-up meeting every Monday so we're on the same page because there seems to be a disconnect. And then the last I want then is, okay, here's what I want to do about the situation. So you might have an idea like the stand-up meeting, or you might say, I don't know what to do with it. I just wanted to put that on the table and I want to know what you think about the situation. And then you go from there. And so, as you can see, it's a very thoughtful way to get across what you mean to get across because you want a change. And so, just being reactive isn't really dealing with the longer term issue. Sometimes it is about standing up for yourself. And the whole point of the Start with Heart is that you want to be respected and you want to be heard. And so this tool can help you explain that. So I have all kinds of free resources on my website, including this template. If you go to deborahlukovich.com slash, I think it's resources and interviews or interviews and resources. And or you can just email me, dlukovich@gmail.com. And if you like this kind of instructive video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And also, same thing with my podcast, Dose of Depth. You're hearing it there as well. And if you would like some help having a difficult conversation, I use email coaching many times to help people do this kind of thing where we work on the template together back and forth. And I don't even, we might meet for an exploratory chat and then do the rest via email. And that's more affordable than one-on-one coaching sessions. So, and then also subscribe at my website to get more content like this and tools that can help you deal with negative people. And another one, I think I might take on, be a little bit more specific about how to deal with MAGA people in your life. That might be interesting too. So stay tuned and take care.